Welcome to the All About Us podcast show where we explore the ideas, experiences, and turning points to shape who we become. I'm your host, Carl Allen. Today's guest is Will Barrios, founder of Tatro Toys and the creator of the Tatro Toys playset. Will is a certified play expert with a design background from Fordham University and a lifelong believer in the power of imagination. What began as a cardboard toy he built at 10 years old has grown into a company committed to the creativity, connection, and belonging for kids and families. Will is known for his crazy ideas and even crazier solutions. Alongside building a toy company, he tours as a Broadway technician and continues to explore how play evolves as children and families grow. Today, we will talk about imagination, creativity, and why toys need to grow with the people who use them. Will, welcome to the All About Us podcast show. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Can you take us back to when you were 10 years old and first started building toys?
Sure. I would say, first at the time, I didn't know I was creating a toy. I just knew that I was not finding things as creative as I wanted them to be in my life. And I just found a cardboard box one day and I pulled some paint together, some markers, some glue, and I just started painting and creating little worlds, creating little scenes, and creating characters. And I would build those characters out of beads, put them on magnets, and run them around the floor of the playset.
What do you remember feeling when you created the original cardboard toy?
Joy. Joy.
Hey, can you give us a brief description of this first toy you created?
Yeah. It was a probably a medium-sized cardboard box, and I cut out a rectangular hole in it. I put a floor in it, and so it had this little opening that you could see. And I started building scenes that I could put in there into this kind of viewing hole, I would say. And I would just paint those scenery and create little characters, and I would like put on little shows and tell stories.
Okay, so it was kind of like your own little miniature sound stage then.
Yeah, pretty much. Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so prior to that, what was play composed of for you?
So play for me was very creative. I think I had a lot of I had Legos growing up and I had things that I could really build on. I think I really enjoyed building games. Even later when I was doing computer games, it was always building games and strategy that I really enjoyed. And I loved just creating worlds and building in general. I know I was a theater kid growing up, and so I had a lot of access to creativity, but clearly was missing something and
Okay.
created that out of nothing.
At what point did you realize that toys could become more than just entertainment and could actually kind of like materialize into a business?
So it wasn't until 2017, after going to school for production and going through theater school, that I realized that I had this spark still for this little thing I created when I was a
Okay.
kid. And I thought, could there be any use for that in the world today? Would anybody want it? Would anybody see something that I saw in it? And I created it. I came up with prototypes and I tested with parents. And through that testing, I saw kids explore and create and invent and use their imaginations in ways that they may not have been using them before. And even when, two kids are playing or three kids are playing with it or a parent's involved, utilizing the other people to play on their own stories to create narratives and things like that that allow them to express themselves.
Okay.
And it was in those moments that I realized that.
How did your interest in design develop as you got older?
So I created multiple versions of this. Now I know it's a toy, right? I created many versions of this toy and it matured in the scope of material and of just production itself. And when I decided that maybe this could be useful for kids and for parents and families, I went to a manufacturer and looked at tons of materials and decided that I wanted it to be, a certain, soft foam material, and decided it to be magnetic playset, that it could be reusable and interchangeable. And that's really how it evolved into that final playset.
Okay. What role did imagination play in shaping your creative identity?
Gosh, I
Mhm.
think, I grew up in a very, very loving household. I'm adopted. I'm an only child. I didn't have other kids to play, or I had other kids to play with, but I have like siblings that I could play with.
Right.
When I was playing at home, I was by myself, or, maybe with my parents if, they weren't tired of me yet. And I had to create things myself. And so I think that it's given me a great platform to understand expression and understand that the importance of that for myself and for others, to be able to create and imagine the world that they choose.
Okay, I'm going to digress a bit. At what age were you adopted?
I was adopted at 3 months, so
So
very early on.
early. So you all you realize is your parents. Then you,
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah. Of
at
course.
that age. What section of the country were you raised?
So that's a great question. I was raised all over. I was born in Texas. I was raised in Louisiana and Colorado mostly. And then Rhode Island for a little bit. And then I moved around a lot from there.
Okay, and was this because your parents were in the theater business or stage?
No, my
Okay,
parents grew up as musicians, and they eventually found steady work in, various industries. But they still had a love of music and a love of the arts that really influenced me.
okay. How did your education at Fordham influence the way you think about play and form?
I think one of the best classes we had at Fordham was a collaboration class. And it was a class that we would show up to, and they had a plan for the day, and they had a game plan. But we would walk in, and they would just be like, okay, there's a bucket that you have to fill with water, and you're going to walk it from point A to point B, and you have to do it as a group. Go. And that would be the entire class.
Wow.
And we would have to figure out how to work together, how to describe things to each other in a way that was effective communication. And I think that's really affected the way that I move through life and I move through the work that I do, knowing that we're all working together for the same goal. We're all striving for something to make something happen.
That was actually one of my first classes when I enrolled in UCLA. I think they forced at the time. I think they forced us all to take that our first quarter. It was a class called Effective Communication. So
Right.
yeah, so that that does have a great impact on your interaction, group planning, and just the ability to function and execute as a group.
Absolutely.
What makes a toy meaningful rather than disposable?
I think the use and longevity of it, meaning the way that the child connects with it, and the meaning that they take from it. And that could be as simple as a plush toy. That could be a building set. It could be a lot of different things. But I think it's what the child finds in it meaning wise and takes away from it that gives it that longevity.
Okay, so what does it mean to be a certified play expert?
So the certification is done through ASTRA, which is the American Specialty Toy Retailers Association. And it's people in the toy industry who speak to communities about toys and their intersection with child development.
Okay. So this is something which involves child development because I remember early on in this show, you mentioned something about, I don't think you used the word useful. Yeah, I think you did say useful. So how is this useful in the development of a child?
Are we talking about play in general as
Or
being
no, I'm
useful?
talking about your toy
Well,
because when you're go ahead.
keep in mind, so this toy that I created is something from the previous version of my business. before we have soft relaunched. So if we're talking about that, the older toy, it's
I'm talking
giving
about the new one.
the new ones. So we're still in the soft relaunch. So right
Okay.
now we have our plush, which is our mascot for the company, and we are looking to relaunch the new toy next year sometime. So it's still in development.
It's still in development. Okay.
But the correlation between the two toys is that the new one and the old one are both mix and match play sets.
And where does a mix and match place at?
So it's giving children the opportunity to explore varying ideas of something that exists, giving them different characters, different worlds that they can create, where they can tell narratives and they can explore different ideas in different places.
Okay. So are these cutouts or yeah,
So
how,
so in the old version, it was a 3D magnetic playset, and there were magnetic cutouts that you could put, a rainbow or a sun or something on a backdrop, and then move characters around the playset and create that world. The new one that we're looking at, and the shift in the business that I've been focusing on, is focusing on inclusion and diversity in toys, helping children feel seen and belong in their communities. And the new playset is looking at a mix and match family set that creates different families for modern audiences.
okay. Okay. What surprises you the most about how kids actually use toys?
What surprises me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what surprises me the most is their creativity and their way of functioning in a toy that maybe you didn't expect them to. You build it one way and then you find that it's useful in many other ways as well.
Okay. How does play support connection and belonging?
So I think through play, you are developing confidence, you're developing empathy, and through those two channels, you're able to connect with others. And you're able to, I think it goes back to even talking about collaboration. It goes back to collaboration. It goes back to building community, to solving problems. And of course, the idea through play and through the ideas of building up children confidently is to create better members of society.
Okay, let's talk about the evolution of Tatro Toys. Where did you get the name from and what does that mean to you?
So it was kind of a random smash up of different names and different things I was finding, and I wanted something short and something that sounded strong, and I came up with Tatro. I just put a bunch of words together.
Tatro.
Yeah. Years after that, I realized, oh, it's actually a family name, not mine, but it actually is the last name of a lot of people. And so I found that out. But I thought it was a good, strong name, and I just wanted something short and sweet, and that's what I got. D- Um, and so that's where the name came from.
What is your feeling about the evolution of toys? Do toys need to evolve or can they just be static in a sense?
I think when we talk about evolve, we're talking about the industry or the toy itself.
The toy itself.
The toy itself. So I think that it's so interesting because I think that there are a couple ways to look at this. And one is that a toy itself, I think, should evolve. And I think that that evolution can come from the toy itself or can come from the way that the child approaches the toy. Because as they grow and as they mature, they're going to look at it differently. As their life experiences change, they're going to play with it differently. So I think that that's why it could very well be static. It could be very creative, but I think it's really the meaning that the child takes away from it and the emphasis they put on their own learning into that toy. And I think on top of that, I think it also comes down to the caregivers and the parents and the guardians that are playing with the child and helping them grow through that play that makes a huge difference.
Okay. How does the Tatro playset encourage creativity rather than instruction?
It allows a child to explore multiple different worlds and create in a way that is open-ended. And that's the very buzzword, but open-ended play is incredibly important.
Now you keep saying world. I'm going to try and deep dive into what you
Yeah,
mean by worlds. When you
sure.
talk about worlds, are you talking about settings? Are you talking about family structure? Or what exactly do you mean by worlds?
Yeah. So in the previous iteration of this playset, we are talking about worlds of imagination. So it could be, for example, we had different themes for the playsets. They could have been unicorn, they could have been dinosaur, they could have been cars and trucks. And it could be just that theme, or you can mash them all up and have a unicorn driving a truck. So there's a lot of different worlds that the child can create. And the thing that we're moving into now is creating space and imagery that allows a child to see their modern family in the current world or in an imaginative world, whatever they choose, but that they're seeing themselves in play and they're seeing their family.
Okay. The last iteration you said was magnetic cutouts. This new toy that you're soft launching, no more magnetic cutouts, or
So I'm still exploring what that may be. I think I'm leaning right now. I'll be very honest about where I'm leaning on this. I think it will be possibly a wooden playset. And I love the idea of magnets. I think they're super simple and super easy, but it also could be Velcro. It could be a lot of different other things. But the idea is that whatever material it becomes something that is reusable, sturdy, safe, and just a good material to play with.
so what are some of the major problems you're trying to work out with this relaunch?
Are we talking about like business strategy or we're talking about kind of worldly?
I'm talking more so with, actual construction of the game itself, not the business side.
Gotcha. So kind of the way the child plays with it.
Yeah, and just maybe even some technical aspects. You talked about
Sure.
going from magnetic to maybe wooden to maybe software driven. I mean, what are some of the other things you're kind of like trying to figure out right now concerning
Yeah.
this
So
toy?
I'll kind of give you a bigger overview and then kind of dive down into that. So the biggest overview right now that I can give is, I'm really just trying to plan for next year. So I'm looking at where the idea of this business can go and where our first of all, our new mascot, Flicker, is Flicker the Fox, who is our caring, loving mascot that is everyone's friend and teaches everyone to belong. I have this plush right here. So this
Okay.
is Flicker.
Okay.
So that's our
All right.
mascot. So he leads the way. And I'm looking at where his story goes and potentially having friends and where their story goes together and how they intersect into books and videos and things of that nature that then influence the playset that we create next year. So, talking about the toy itself, I am obviously being mix and match, so in a way that children can play with it in open-ended play. And again, just being something that children, the important part is that children see themselves in the play and they see their families.
So how are you going to introduce, because it seems like this is character driven. So how are you going to introduce the characters to the children like Flicker? How are they going to know who Flicker is, what his characteristics are? Are you thinking about like maybe doing like something audio or something video, or is it just going to be a book or a pamphlet or something that introduces the various different characters?
Yeah, so we already have an ebook out about Flickr's origin story. And we have a video. So I released a single, which is Flickr's theme song. And through that single, we then released a music video. And those are the ways that we're introducing Flickr to the world. And we have a plush now. And that plush is 12 inches tall, super huggable, and ready to be in homes. And that's what we're sharing right now. And I think that the connection to next year is in how do we continue his story and continue other friends around him and continuing that mission and the idea of belonging further.
Okay, so you also work as a Broadway technician.
I
What
do.
is a Broadway technician?
So I am head props on the North American tour of Les Miserables, which means that I am in charge of everything the actors touch and move on stage. I'm also the scenic artist for the show, which is kind of a stretch. I'm not a crazy painter, but it's 5 colors on the set. So it's not too hard. But, that's what I do as I say my night job because we're doing shows at night, of course, and Tatro Toys is my day job. It's what I do in between that work and when I actually have time, which is very rare, free time to do this work.
Now, how did you get into this Broadway technician thing?
So I went to school at Fordham for theater design, and I had always been in the industry in some capacity. I was an actor for years, and then I worked at some casting offices and agencies, talent agencies in New York, and then, of course, Fordham came along, and I started doing props. And so I worked on Broadway, regionally off Broadway, and I worked with a Broadway props coordinator.
Well, that show that you've been working, that show has been running for over 20 years, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been running for 40 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember hearing about it going way back, probably when I was in college. So,
Yeah.
what parallels do you see between live performance and imaginative play?
Yeah, so you know, I would say I would make the connection between 2 things through the people themselves, the creative artists and the work that we do in the toy industry. And then 2, I think it's between theater as an art form to tell stories and to share messages, hopefully in ways that are not direct, but seeing someone else's life lived on stage is important to experience where you may not experience that life otherwise. And you can see what somebody else is experiencing, what they go through, and how they move through life, how they solve problems. And I think that's a huge connection between the two because we're telling stories, we're telling narratives, we're telling people that they belong and they matter. And, if I jump back to the people are super creative backstage and on stage. And the toy industry is the same thing. And we as creators in the toy industry are usually very outgoing and fun and just kids at heart. And, I still say I'm a theater kid at heart and Broadway technician by night.
How does problem solving and collaboration play and function in both spaces?
Gosh, so I think the biggest thing I've learned in my time is that nobody really has the answer. We're all just solving problems pretty frequently. There's a lot of problems that come up, and we have to solve them. Because we're especially on a tour, you're going into different venues all the time. You're going into different spaces, and you have to figure out how to make a show work, regardless of the situation you're in. And I think that theater has taught me that flexibility and has taught me to be that problem solver that can say, I don't know the answer, but I can find it. And I may not find the solution in 5 minutes. I may not find it in a week, but I can find it at some point. And I took that into my work in Tatro Toys, where, for example, I've never worked with a manufacturer before when I started the company in 2017. And I knew that if I just started moving and taking action, I could figure out how to make it work. And I had one night where I got a 6-pack of beer. I sat down and I started emailing, multiple different countries and saying, "Hey, I'm working on this. How do we do this?" And through, hundreds and hundreds of emails, I learned their language and I learned how to navigate all the intricacies of actually manufacturing a product.
Mm. What lessons from theater have carried over into your toy design?
Gosh, so many. Let's see. I would say I think going back to collaboration is one, and working with others. And I think what's really important to me in my business in Tatro Toys is collaborating with families and collaborating with the kids and being very open and honest about feedback on what's working and not working with the toys that we create. And that's really what made the biggest shift from the old version of this company to the new one that we're creating now, which is listening to that feedback. Because the shift for me was years ago hearing, hey, these toys are great. I'm having fun. It's creative. My child's learning and they're growing, but I don't see my family here, or I don't see these toys looking like my kid. And I said, okay, that's important feedback. And I realized that when I had this spark to restart this business again, that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it in a very different way. And I paid attention to that feedback and said, you know, if I walk down a toy aisle now, it's still traditional, normal views. It's not modern families that I see in the toy aisle. And that's what we want to change.
Okay. You often talk about joy and connection. Why are those values central to your work?
I mean, we should all be joyful. No, I think that we live in a time that's for many people very divided and very loud right now. And I think that it's important to find joy. I think especially as as we live in that world, giving kids and parents both space to find that joy. And maybe for the kid, it's in the toy. For the parents, it's in seeing their kid play with the toy. It's seeing that kid grow and build confidence, build self esteem. And the connection is, I think, in those two siblings playing together and building a bond. Families building a bond and building memories together. And I think on top of that connection is using all of this to build empathy
Okay.
and build people that will go into the world being able to connect better with others and being able to listen and being able to work better together.
How do toys help families connect?
So it's about those bonding moments and it's about time spent together, but it's also in, I think, in this type of toy, being open ended play allows everyone to be very creative and talk openly about what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And those moments create conversations, and those conversations lead to deeper meaning and the bonding and again, creating better people that we're sending out into the world.
Okay, what does belonging in play look like in practice?
So belonging valued and they build better self-esteem and better confidence and they function differently in the world and in play and in school and in activities with other children. I think that that's just the way that they function and the way that they develop.
How do you build toys for the children and the parents who play with them?
So good question. I think I always build with the adults in mind because I want them to get as much joy out of it as the kid is going to get if possible. And I want to encourage parents and grown-ups to find that joy again, to be a kid again. And I think it is through imaginative play, through creating creative ways of playing with something that it isn't just one specific item, that it's multiple items that they can play with and multiple things that can become different things that create a world that they can explore and they can learn and be curious.
Okay. Well, I didn't mention this. This is the part of the show called Flip Mode, where you get to ask me three questions. So now you can ask me three questions. I should have told you this earlier. So let's start with your first question.
So, first question is how did you get started with this podcast? That's two questions, but so I'll say first, how did you get started with the podcast?
Wow. I wanted to do something that was an outreach of my nonprofit, stand up and do something, which really is a social justice nonprofit, but it's a social justice nonprofit for everybody. You know, no matter what race, color, religion, it's a social justice for all of us. So I wanted something that would reach out and bring us all together. And so that's really how this podcast came about. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then one day I was sitting down and I thought about it. I said, man, when I was at UCLA, friend of mine, he owned a salon. And then this guy used to always come by and me and he was a buddy of mine. We'd go out to lunch and the guy would always come by and he was talking about his radio show and he was doing cultural based shorts, like 15, 20 minutes on the radio program. My buddy owned a big giant hair salon. About maybe 15, 20 women doing hair and about 10 barbers. So he always gave this, helped this guy out with a show. And the guy happened to be Tavis Smiley.
Gotcha. Ok.
And so I said, well, wait a minute, maybe I could do something kind of like that with the podcast, but in a different way. That's kind of like how this came about.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Let's see, number 2. What interests you in Tatro Toys to be on this podcast?
Well, actually, my staff does a lot of the selection. So,
Okay.
yeah, my staff does a lot of the selection. And so, and my staff writes the scripts. So there's a lot that goes into this show. It's definitely not me. So I have, yeah, I'm just the end product of all of this. So I think
Gotcha.
I do the easy part. I do this and I do the sound.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I don't interact with the guests prior to the show. I don't do any of the video editing. I do the sound. And
Gotcha.
Jenny Lind, my other assistant, she does all the interaction with the guests. So that was more so on Jenny Lind's end.
Gotcha. Okay.
Third
Let's
question.
see. A third question. What brings you joy?
Wow. I like seeing other people happy. And so me being able, whether it's my friends or my family or just people I meet, one of the experiences, one of the biggest revelations for me in life was when my stepdad was passing away. And I was up here in New York at the time, and he was in Pennsylvania, and he called me on the phone, and he said, he called me up and told me to get everybody, call all the family members and get them to the hospital. He was tired with the cancer treatment, so he was just going to, basically tell them to give him some medication to make him feel comfortable so he could comfortably pass. And me and him didn't have a great relationship growing up. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. So it was kind of stunned me that out of all my brothers and sisters, he would call me to put that task on me. And I just broke down crying on the phone. And he said one thing that I just always remembered for the rest of my life. He said, "Don't cry." He said, "I have great memories of all of you." And he said, "Those memories I can take with me." And that just really struck me because it was just like, this is the purpose of life, is meeting people, developing good friendships, good relationships, and out of that, creating good memories, because that's the only thing you can take with you into the next. So
That's great.
process and, well, I think we did that. No, we didn't. Process and problem solving. You're known for crazy ideas and crazier solutions. How do you approach problem solving?
Very carefully and at the same time with, complete destruction. I think that you can plan a lot, but I think that you can also just go with the flow or just let things fall apart and start piecing them back together. And, I say that as someone who has started a business, closed the business because of the pandemic, and restarted the business as I am already picking up the pieces. And I think that, it's just taking moments to be reflective and to be one side of you being intellectual about your problem solving, but another side of you to be very fluid in that problem solving and know that there will be challenges on the way and there will be things that pop up that you don't expect, but being fluid in that and letting them happen and fixing them as you go. So I guess for me, the problem solving is twofold. It's being intellectual partially and then also being very fluid with the experience.
Okay. What role does failure play in your creative process?
Well, I try to fail as much as possible. I think the faster you fail, the faster you figure things out. I look to make as many mistakes as possible within reason and use them to solve. I mean, that's another way to solve problems is just Throw something out there, see if it works. And if it doesn't, no big deal. Move on to the next thing, tweak it a little bit, work on it.
How do you know when an idea is worth pursuing?
Two things. I think one is for myself to look at something and say that brings joy or that has power. That's one for me. The other side is looking at the kids or the grown-ups for me and seeing if they see the same thing.
Okay, what keeps you curious when projects get challenging?
I mean, I'm always curious. So I think I'm always going to ask questions. I'm always going to try and figure things out. I think what keeps me curious is the hope that something can be better.
Okay. Okay. How do you hope children experience Tatro toys in the future?
I hope they find a place to belong. And I hope they know that their story matters and that they deserve a seat at the table and that not only them, but also their families matter and their communities matter.
What does it mean to you to keep imagination alive as people grow older?
It means a lot to me to be able to provide a platform and products that allow people to be a child again, to be able to be curious again, to be able to be inventive again, because all of that matters in the scope of finding yourself and being authentic.
How do you personally stay playful in your challenging life? You have a day job and a night job.
It's very difficult for sure. I try to find the human moments where I can just be me, where I can do things that bring me joy and that bring me creative outlets, that keep me interested and keep me growing.
Okay. So, how do my listeners or anyone who wants to collaborate with you and Tatro Toys, how do they connect with you?
So the easiest way is going to our website, which is tatrotoys.com, tatrotoys.com. Everything is there, including my email direct to me. We also have our Facebook and Instagram, which is at Tatro Toys.
Okay. Okay. All that will be in the show notes and the promos, all that information. Thank you for sharing your story and your belief in the power of play. Your
Thank
journey
you.
reminds us that imagination is not something we grow out of, but something we were meant to grow with. To our listeners, Will's work with Tatro Toys is a reminder that creativity, joy, and connection begin with permitting ourselves to play. This has been the All About Us podcast, where we explore the sparks that shape our lives and the ideas that bring us together. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and don't forget to play. Have a good day.
Thank you.